Sponsored by that thing you've never heard of. Hate! Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of fur strands in wafer-thin layers that fill my Scooby suit. If the word hate was engraved on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal 1/1 billionth of the hate I feel for Velma at this micro-instant. For you. Hate. Velma! Daphne! Norville! Fred! Scooby... Oh wait, no, you're fine. You're a good boy. I have a secret game that I like to play. It's a very nice game. It's a lovely game. It's a game of fun and a game of adventure. A game of losers and lies and bad jokes. A game of creative bankruptcy and talentless hacks. And the smell of rotting franchises. Which of you four would like to play my little game? Big thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members for helping me make videos. More information on how you can support and the benefits of doing so at the end. Also join the Discord, it's fun. Oh boy. The amount of people that legitimately wanted this to happen wouldn't even fit into a shoebox. And yet, here we are. They just had to do it, didn't they? They just had to make me crack out the costume again. I made a 2-hour video on the first season of Velma. Yes, I am terminally online, all thoughts and prayers are welcome. And unfortunately, a lot of things I say in that video still apply. So go watch that first, because a lot of the things I'm going to discuss are follow-ups to things I said there. I mean, you don't have to. It would make me feel better. But you don't have to. It's okay. Really. It's fine. You guys seem to like this a lot when I wore it in that video, so I thought I'd give you that little treat again. I may or may not be wearing anything underneath this. I'll leave that up to your imagination. The Scooby suit stays on, honey. Never beating those furry allegations, am I? So anyway, Velma. For the sake of this video still being its own thing, here's a quick summary. Velma is the creation of actor-writer Mindy Kaling and writer Charlie Grandy. They wanted to make a teen drama romance horror show because they're obsessed with that genre, and also do it as an adult animated comedy because those are all the rage. They had a deal with Warner Brothers, who for some ungodly reason let them use the Scooby-Doo IP for a HBO show, with Velma intending to serve as a more adult origin story for its characters. The result was a disaster full of awful writing, unfunny jokes, and obnoxious characters that turned the classic Scooby gang that fans know and love into unrecognisable and despicable wretches, served as a blatant self-insert for Kaling, and spat in the face of Scooby fans while outwardly claiming to be a love letter to the thing they adore. Even from the first teaser trailer, the show seemed to be taking an antagonistic approach to its viewers, whether that was the intention or not.
You know what 420 is, right?
Yeah. It's code for adults who still watch cartoons.
Negative coverage and feedback was swift, with it becoming the worst-rated show on IMDb and branded the most hated show of all time. Now, they had a chance to redeem themselves with a second season, which was already in the works when Season 1 released. They could have risen to the occasion, but since I'm standing here once again in a Scooby-Doo costume with an enormous smile on my face, that obviously didn't happen. Overall, Season 2 is a downgrade. Even though it's not as bad in some aspects, it is worse in more. And it isn't really accurate to say that it does anything better, so much as it neglects to do it as badly or as much. Does that make sense? I'm hoping that made sense. But I don't get dressed up for nothing, so ad time. Hey you, do you like sound? Of course you do. I may have never talked about them before in the entire history of this channel, ever. But there's never been a better time to check out Raycon's best-selling everyday earbuds, as they now have a new and upgraded model. Have you ever wanted to do this? Well, now you don't have to, because their new model features active noise cancellation. Although admittedly, yelling at children is pretty fun. And they can now connect to up to 2 devices at once. Being weatherproof and sweat resistant, and having a comfortable ergonomic design, they've long since become an essential tool, helping me touch grass without getting bored, for going on walks, for listening to musical podcasts. Oh, and they also now do these cool protective cases too. Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee, which is more happiness than I've ever felt. So click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/cynicalreviews to get 15% off your order plus free shipping and help support the channel. The writing is one aspect of Velma that's definitely taken a turn for the even worse. It's actually difficult to do a plot summary because the story meanders worse than the Hebrews in the desert, but let's have a go anyway. After solving the murder mystery from last season and thwarting Fred's mum, the serial killer, Velma is now one of the popular girls. Not that she's learned any humility at all. She and Daphne discover the body of the sheriff who was killed at the end of Season 1, and soon a bunch of other middle-aged white men end up being murdered. After many, and I mean many, tangents, Velma and the gang discover that the murderer was in fact Scrappy. Yes, Scrappy-Doo is the villain. Really breaking new ground with that one, weren't they?
Sorry, Velma. Turns out I am the killer!
It turns out that it was all a big revenge plot for the military performing horrific experiments on him. Meanwhile, Dr. Edna Perdue has been experimenting with brain-swapping operations so that she and Scrappy can escape in the, somehow completely intact, bodies of the hot girls who were killed last season. Oh, and they were aided by a mysterious figure called Uncle Scooby. Yes, really. Who turns out to be Velma's dad's girlfriend, Sophie, in a twist that they try really hard to justify, and you'll never see it coming because it's so fucking stupid. Scrappy goes berserk, and Velma gets killed by a fucking missile. I almost cheered, but then she comes back as a ghost, possesses Scrappy, and kills him from the inside. So yeah, real ghosts are also a thing in this universe now. It makes you wonder why they didn't show up in the previous season, but I guess I've already put more thought into this than the writers did. And at the very end, they tease another sequel with the promise that it might be possible to bring Velma back from the dead if she doesn't get dragged into hell first. Oh no, that sure would be a bad thing to happen, wouldn't it? And that really is glossing over a lot of what happens because almost none of it is important anyway. The last season was padded to hell, but now it's somehow even more egregious. I wasn't kidding when I said that the story wanders all over the place. They could have told the story that they wanted to tell in about 5 episodes, but they insisted on filling out the 10-episode run with so much pointless crap. There are entire plot lines that don't need to exist, and entire episodes that could have been left on the drawing board. Like a field trip with events that could have just happened in Crystal Cove. Because it's a high school show, so they have to have stuff like that, I guess. I'm assuming that they had an order of 10 episodes to fulfill, so they just threw shit at the wall and saw what stuck in order to stretch that runtime out. That would explain why the episode recaps are so long. Not that they help us understand the meandering plot at all. In fact, why did they even bother with episode recaps when all the episodes were released at once? As a result, the pacing feels incredibly rushed in the first and last episodes when they realise that they had a story they were actually supposed to establish and conclude, but utterly drags in the middle. Watching this was even more torturous than last time, doubly so since it's so boring. And then there's the actual content of what's been written. There's a lot of dumb writing to be found, as you might expect. For example, they waste so much time on this idiotic tradition of oiling all the creaky hinges in town, giving it a backstory and everything, when it's so inconsequential and makes no fucking sense. How do they verify who oiled what hinges and how many? How are they supposed to judge this? It's so dumb. At one point, a crowd is about to burn Velma and some other characters alive. I mean, based? And Velma uses a Photoshop app to convince them that all the murder victims have enormous cocks, so the detective basically says only stay here if you have a small penis. So all the men immediately leave because of course they want everyone to think that they have a giant Johnson. Which doesn't even make sense in context because why wouldn't they just burn her and then go home? And what about the women in the crowd? Why did they leave as well? Just burn the bitch! At another point, Fred starts talking to a woman who thinks he's a priest and it gets weirdly romantic. Then during a trial, she calls in and claims to be the murderer while a victim's body drops down from above. Later it's revealed that it was Sophie's baby and then actually Sophie herself using a text-to-speech device for babies.
You were pretending to be the serial killer? Why? And how?
I thought funny.
Except, I'm sorry, there's no way you could make that device sound like this.
Because I'm the serial killer, and I will keep killing until I get what I want.
That's fucking stupid. This baby babble box is also how Scrappy talks, which is another thing that causes you to lose brain cells the more you think about it. Stuff keeps happening only because characters are stupid assholes. Like, why did they not seal the court building to catch the murderer's accomplice? Especially since it's meant to be a military court-martial for the unauthorized launching of fucking missiles? Could have ended the murder spree right there. They have to keep putting arbitrary barriers in Velma's way to hinder her investigation, which end up presenting very little challenge and they don't last long in any case. They throw in a lot of red herrings, which are of course a staple of mystery stories and aren't necessarily bad, except when they do it too much and when they have the actual answer to the mystery completely blindside you through lack of setup. Once again, they offer incredibly anticlimactic resolutions to plot lines, questions, and cliffhangers, like that pentagram note that Daphne's parents received at the end of Season 1? Oh, it's just someone advertising their occult bookshop. Great. They also forget about multiple things from last season, like Norville's sword skills or Velma using an inhaler, even when those things might have been relevant. For the most part, whenever there's a moment of genuine character development, it's either completely unearned or they immediately ruin it. I also think that because they were struggling to decide exactly what they wanted the show to be, the tone is pretty inconsistent. Like, you've got brutal murder, but then you've also got blatant cartoon logic, like someone getting hit by a car and being perfectly fine. A throwback to previous iterations of Scooby-Doo, maybe, but this is so different from those that when they try to do this, it's really jarring. Especially since it doesn't line up with how such instances were treated in Season 1. That confusion is a general problem of the show. It's trying to be so many different things and ends up being terrible at all of them, and it's honestly even worse here. So once again, there's nothing redeeming in Season 2's writing. And if you thought they'd take our feedback on board and give the Velma gang a redemption arc, then you, my good sir, are an idiot. Starting with the titular bitch herself. Pretty much everything I said in the previous video still applies, although in terms of her characterization, some of her flaws have been dialed down from an 11 to something like a 9.5. She's not quite as gross and disgusting and food-obsessed as in Season 1, although she does still have her moments.
Help us! Or at least toss out a s'more so I can die happy!
There's not quite as much sexism, but it's still there.
Their dongs were removed. This is almost as bad as girls having their brains removed.
She's still an asshole.
Actually, I've stopped writing.
Oh no, why?
Judgmental.
He was hot, so there's an upper limit on his intelligence.
Utterly self-absorbed.
Meaning my decision to violate the rules of Creaky Friday are even more validated. Yeah, boy!
2 men are dead, Velma.
Yes, of course, I'm sorry.
And just as hypocritical as ever.
Whoa, look at all those likes. Huh, feels a little shallow, TBH. Wait, brain chemistry just changed. This is the greatest feeling in the world!
A particular highlight was her saying that she hates rich people.
But my whole life, nothing has made me angrier than rich people.
And then as soon as she gets a taste of wealth, she immediately adopts Tory levels of cuntishness.
A few moments later.
Velma's here. Yes, I refer to myself in the third person now. As someone who now lives a life of zero consequences.
Thing is, she was already a worthless bint, so this supposed change is utterly meaningless.
Because unless you have generational wealth, it takes so much effort to achieve your dreams, the only way to do it is to become a selfish monster.
Wait, so my choices are failure to achieve my dreams or selfish monster?
Again, you're already a selfish monster, so maybe you're just a loser. In addition to all this, she's also now a hardcore Reddit atheist, and is as insufferable as you'd expect.
Religion, superstition, when you remove the fun hats and free wine, you're just about controlling people with fear. This is why religious people are so maddening. You act nuts, but then do good stuff no one else will do, like feed the poor and entertain old people. Sacred traditions? This is oiling hinges, not some old legend worthy of a montage.
Thing is, I could say that she's not as bad in some ways, but it doesn't really matter because she still sucks so hard that I don't see how anyone could care about anything that happens to her. But hey, at least we can all bond over shitting on her. It's a universal experience. Daphne's not as much of a bitch as last season, although again, she has her moments.
I know I'm a good person. I post on my socials whenever there's an election.
She only does martial arts once. Other than that, it seems like they forgot about all that training she did, because she never gets to use it. Last season, she was trying to find her parents, and this season, she's struggling to figure out her identity, which ultimately doesn't get much payoff. Really though, her significance in terms of the narrative largely consists of her relationship with Velma. Despite no one asking for this or wanting it, the show's creators decided to devote an ungodly amount of screen time to what is essentially a fanfiction.
What convinced you, Daphne? Was it my increasingly unhinged texts? Because I will abuse that.
Their relationship sucks and they still have no chemistry.
But I think you're dumb for not believing in different moisturizers for different body parts. Or soulmates.
Oh my god, do you really want to have a deep conversation about our feelings right now?
Yes!
Fine. Punch it, Fred.
If the whole point of this relationship was to make Velma look even worse, then they earned a gold star.
Daphne, please stop ignoring me. I'm your girlfriend, and we just need to talk about Amber until you admit I'm right.
In fact, almost all the, quote, drama in this romance results from Velma being, well, herself.
I don't know who I am.
We're girlfriends. That's the only identity either of us needs.
As part of her journey of self-discovery, Daphne indulges in unorthodox practices like manifesting and Wicca. Velma's new status as a hardcore fart-sniffing rationalist means that she can't resist being obnoxious about it.
Yes, it's a godless universe, so just help me cheat.
Which, of course, causes tension with Daphne.
It's idiots like you who ignore facts and science that do.
As does her outspoken ridicule of the concept of soulmates.
We're soulmates.
Soulmates? Daphne, that term was invented by the publishing industry to sell books about vampires boning werewolves.
Because that's what we all wanted to see from a Scooby-Doo show, wasn't it? Idiotic melodrama.
Oh, cool. Maybe Cogburn and Dr. Perdue were soulmates. And I'm not just saying soulmates because you hate the word soulmates. Soulmates.
But of course they had to insist on throwing in a bunch of immature bullshit to keep up this will they won't they nonsense. Like adding in another third wheel which causes Velma to get jealous.
Okay, I spent all night imagining Daphne's makeout sesh with Amber to psych myself up to destroy her. Wait, no, starting to cry.
Or then baiting us into thinking that Daphne is cheating on Velma, only for it to turn out that she put a curse on her instead?
I put a curse on you so no one could love you and you die alone.
I was wrong. I can't take it. Why?
Which is arguably way worse? You get why that's worse, right? We all know how pointless all this is because there's no chance they won't end up together in the end, because that's what the writers rub themselves off to at night. In fact, near the end, Velma admits that they might be soulmates because they could hear their voices in each other's heads while their brains were in jars. Which sounds stupid, and I can't tell if it makes sense or not because the rules of this universe are so inconsistent. It all makes for a romance that's as tantalizing as a macroeconomics textbook that's been soaked in piss. Moving on to Fred, they've taken a step back from utterly humiliating him, but he's still an incompetent idiot.
Actually, Mother never even let me do that, and I have always wondered where toast comes from. My hypothesis is the kitchen.
And an arsehole, although they have toned this down somewhat. And he still has serious mummy issues. He also becomes a Catholic for a bit because he thinks it will help him with his mystery investigating. But mostly it's an excuse to make religion jokes and make him look like more of a dumbass.
You just better pray the church never teaches me attack spells! Real faith is knowing something's true even when it's verifiably false.
Look at his saint's toe.
No, Velma's right. It's the caramel. Wait. No, that was bone.
Fred actually gets the most earned character development out of all the gang.
I'll kill you! Hold on. That's weird, because I don't think I'm actually angry. Is this what emotional growth feels like?
I wouldn't know.
Even if they can't resist ruining it on multiple occasions.
Oh, it's stuck, isn't it?
Yep.
Oh,
Norville no longer simps for Velma, although the resolution to that whole issue is extremely underwhelming. I guess they just got bored of that storyline? Now his whole thing is that he hallucinates because he feels guilty over killing Fred's mum, even though she was about to kill him and his friends, which never gets brought up as a way of helping him with his guilt, because that would have required competent writing. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but the way he makes his hallucinations go away is by snacking. You may have forgotten that he's meant to be Shaggy's counterpart, because he's nothing like Shaggy at all, but this is their explanation for his obsession with food. because this is a dark adult reboot and they've doubled down on him hating drugs, so he can't just have the munchies. It's not that far removed from kissing cures panic attacks, honestly. In order to cure his anxiety, he tricks the girls in jars from last season into helping him with an experiment, then fries his brain, which inadvertently makes him a psychopath.
Yeah, sometimes I do bad things that you don't know about. For instance, I bought tainted pee to pass your stupid drug tests. And I think smoking weed makes you a loser.
You know, I actually think I like him better this way.
I'm so sorry that you're a little bitty baby.
But that goes away on its own without any effort or explanation, because once again, these writers are fucking donkeys.
JK, I was just checking that my empathy is fully back. And it is. I can't believe I said that. Oh god, I'm gonna be sick.
And it turns out that what he was seeing weren't hallucinations, but was actually the ghost of Fred's mum who thought she was a hallucination, which means it makes even less sense that she disappears when he snacks. Like, what? Oh, and he engages in a romance with one of the brain girls, which raises a lot of questions as to the logistics. But the whole time he had her confused with a different brain girl, because we can't go having our characters being anything other than smooth-brained arseholes, can we? Since Norville's ex-girlfriend Gigi has been relegated to a side character in this season, the fifth sort of member of the gang is now a new character, Amber. They're non-binary, if you couldn't tell. They mostly exist to argue with Velma about the occult, and to be a cause of drama between Velma and Daphne. Apart from that, they don't bring much of value, and they're also a dickhead.
That was all you. And I'll always be morally superior.
And that goes for all the other characters as well. The only one who's even slightly likeable is Fred's dad, who has some of the only semi-decent jokes in the show.
Untie that witch! Never mind, as you were.
Otherwise, it's the same assortment of assholes we witnessed last season.
Sabotage? How dare you!
Velma Season 2 has done almost nothing to make its characters more appealing, doubling down on some of their worst aspects and only improving others by merely neglecting to make them as pronounced. They'll still provoke disgust and contempt, but you might be able to hold down your bile this time.
You guys are the real losers. Thanks for nothing.
Quick note about the performances, I did appreciate Glenn Howerton once again trying to chew the scenery as much as possible as Fred.
To the vanmobile!
And Frank Welker is still decent as his dad, but everyone else is just meh. Mindy Kaling's delivery as Velma is shockingly monotone given that she's playing the title character and it's her fucking show?
What? Police tape? Coroners? A detective needlessly squatting and shaking her head? Mr. S isn't missing? I think he's dead!
I also noticed a difference in audio quality with some of the side characters' lines. My best guess is that they were recorded in a different studio or using different mics from the rest of the cast.
High school. Best time of our lives.
Oh, best of times indeed. I'd do anything to go back.
It doesn't happen often, so when it does, it really stands out.
Not bad, Velma.
Velma, is that you? Or have kids wised up and started copying your brilliant mix of brains and bang?
In any case, the performances are no less unremarkable than they were last season. Shocker. You'll still be holding your laughter though, because the comedy is just as bad, if not worse. To be fair, there are a few jokes that are actually okay, and as I said, almost all of them come courtesy of Fred's dad.
I promised to win you over with a fun weekend at the Jones estate. The only thing more impressive than the house is the number of people who died building it.
But the rest of it is just... ugh. It's hard to believe given how badly the first season failed at humour, but it seems like this time around they were even more desperate to come up with anything even remotely resembling a joke. It's kind of pathetic, actually. Most of the jokes just aren't funny, even when they were trying so hard to be.
My mother wasn't possessed and really was a killer. That means I'm half killer, or full killer if you go by Judaism rules.
So the killer hates the 4th of July, likes electronics, and wears comfortable sneakers. Geez, are we looking for a soldier or a grandpa?
Call me a belly button, Father, because over the past few days I've found things in me you can't even imagine.
It's like they hired Rainier Wolfcastle to do their joke writing.
Students, I have some sensitive information.
Mr. S is missing, and we know he didn't quit because teachers really make a meal out of it when they do.
That's the joke.
If I showed you every example of these, we'd be here all week. But it's stuff like the kid who got his leg cut off twice in the last season has it cut off again in a throwaway background joke. You know, for those of you out there who care about the Velma lore. Or the school kids being watched on a Japanese TV show via CCTV, which was an attempt to have a joke with payoff but flops really hard. They must have broken their funny bones. Shame that was the only thing they broke, really. They've committed basically every comedy error you can think of. There's jokes that don't make any sense.
And only a week after Cockburn was killed, another middle-aged white guy. Is someone targeting smartwatch users?
I don't get it. Is the use of smartwatches a thing middle-aged white men do in particular? Am I missing something? You've got jokes that are old or unoriginal.
And when brains in jars are dying, whining is the final stage before drama.
What? I told you about that brain teaser job because I'd already booked it, you backstabbing bitch!
Melodrama.
You guys are tearing this friend group apart and ruining our shared birthday!
As death becomes imminent, the final stage, being boring.
Okay, now that that's settled, who wants to hear about my dream from last night?
Now see how The Simpsons executed this joke far better, like 25 years ago?
You can expect to go through 5 stages. The first is denial.
No way, because I'm not dying.
Second is anger.
Why, you little dude!
After that comes fear.
What's after fear? What's after fear?
Bargaining.
Doc, you gotta get me out of this. I'll make it worth your while.
And finally, acceptance.
Well, we all gotta go sometime.
Mr. Simpson, your progress astounds me.
There's jokes that are really forced.
Would a murderer be a children's party clown? Or know every sign of the zodiac? Or give hitchhikers rides? Okay, not great examples.
I get what the joke is meant to be. She's referencing real-life serial killers, but she's talking about Norville here, who doesn't have any of these qualities. So it makes no sense for her to bring them up. They just really wanted to have a joke here?
No way. Unlike a recorded message from any failed 90s celeb, I can't be bought.
These are like Family Guy cutaway gags, but without the cutaways.
Because, as rich people say when they're asked to pay taxes, I ain't doing it.
The worst examples of the jokes that are laboured are the ones that result from them trying to milk a subject for as much humour as possible, such as Norville's dad being a massive stoner, or the girls in jars having to deal with their situation, which means that already bad jokes quickly become repetitive and stale. Hey, I can make a bunch of better jokes involving jars. Not sure YouTube would want me to, though. Come. I especially love when they kept cutting to credits on jokes. When you do this, they're supposed to be funny jokes, but these aren't. And it feels like they were trying to trick you into laughing out of the sense that you were supposed to. Even then, they're incredibly inconsistent about doing this.
She took the sock off the door, so I'm going to bed.
What? You live here now?
Because this is still an adult animated comedy / teen horror thing, there are of course more bad sex jokes.
I'm getting my body back? Oh my god, that's so sex. I mean, wonderful. I can go back to my old sex. I mean life. Who keeps saying sex?
For the most part, the sexual stuff has been toned down in this season, possibly as a response to certain complaints about the last one.
Oh, here comes the perv stuff.
No longer do we get congregations of naked cowboys in the shower at Ram Ranch, although they do still insist on sexualizing characters that are canonically underage. Fred in particular has a somewhat interesting phase.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry. How can I make it up to you?
You can do it again.
What? Your mother would have.
I don't know, it's just a bit weird, isn't it? There's less gross-out humour this time, although they do resort to it on occasion. Velma is no longer as outwardly contemptuous about white people, although there's still a lot of bad jokes about men, white men in particular, and there's just a general theme of men being dumb.
If I wanted to date someone who'd rather risk their life than communicate, I'd be straight.
We found the bodies of 2 men in their 40s, or so we assume from their tribal armband tattoos.
Who will watch our World War II documentaries?
Or collect guitars?
They do still throw in the occasional joke about women to try to balance it out.
There's even a place to brag about how discounted the sweater you just bought was.
Sure, but where do you complain that the person you bragged to wasn't impressed enough? Oh, there! Wow!
But if you weren't a fan of this sort of thing last season, let's just say it will still rustle your jimmies. One thing that definitely hasn't changed is the show's over-reliance on reference humor, especially to things in pop culture.
I'm gonna get these women talking like they just saw a trailer for a new Jake Gyllenhaal movie.
If I win the science fair, you dump William and promise no more dating rich guys, unless the actor Steven Yeun is rich.
Did George R.R. Martin finally release his next novel, or are my nipples erect because the temperature just dropped?
One that stands out in particular is Velma's obsession with Beyonce.
Sure, the sentiment of a soul is nice, but the only immutable essence inside of me is Beyonce's incomparable If I Were a Boy.
I've never actually listened to this song before, so I tried.
Mother of God, it's all toilet sounds.
Then I got bored and listened to Steel Panther for like 20 minutes, which restored my will to live. See, I can do references too.
What are you?
What am I? I'm as close as you're getting to Beyonce, kid.
They even recite Beyonce lyrics during a seance? Are you fucking kidding me?
I know if I'm haunting you, you must be haunting me.
Like, we get it. You want Beyonce to sit on your face. I mean, who doesn't? But it's not nearly as funny as you seem to think it is. A lot of the references are really dated, almost like they pulled from material they'd written 20 years ago.
But wait, not to sound like an East German swim coach, that's beyond romantic. I feel like a girl in a 90s R&B song.
Velma, in conjunction with her partner Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson, the guy everyone liked until they realised how much of a pretentious douche he was. And more so than last season, there's a lot of political jokes and references.
All I've wanted is to be with Daphne, but now that I am, something feels off.
Because you also told Sonia Sotomayor that you loved her.
My posts get treated like sensible tax reform, mocked and ignored.
Nap? Hungry.
Election. Stolen. Witch hunt.
Jokes like this feel weird and out of place in something that's meant to be related to the Scooby-Doo franchise. I mean, this isn't a Scooby-Doo thing, but you get what I mean, right? And surprise, surprise, some of these political references are very outdated.
We lost the election, and we didn't even hear Daphne sneak off to Gigi's cabin last night to walk in the woods like Hillary Clinton.
This happened about 8 years ago, just so you know. Season 1 was rightly ridiculed for its gross overuse of meta-humor. They don't open the show with an extended obnoxious meta-joke this time, but it still only takes them about 3 minutes to make one.
It means I want to dig her up and make sure she's truly dead. In horror movies, killers always return 3 to 10 times.
And in almost every scary movie and TV show, spooky stuff is only scared of crosses and holy water.
And the police will gladly work with them so they're not slowed down by some action movie-style jurisdictional pissing match.
I think the humor is most insufferable when they attempt to be self-aware.
No more fracking for oil, or saying fracking as a double entendre. Adult women who wear pigtails. You're too fracking old.
No, I'm not gonna laugh at jokes like that. Go fuck yourself. It's at its worst when they attempt to be self-aware and meta in order to essentially have their cake and eat it too.
Velma? You know I think jump scares are cheap.
Like they have an episode which is based on the 80s coming-of-age movie The Breakfast Club, and the characters rant about how 80s references are, truthfully, played out.
Hey, your Saturday detention looks just like The Breakfast Club. Best movie of the best decade, when you ignore the nukes, crack, and AIDS.
Hold on. Saturday detention? Teens reduced to a single character trait? Was my dad right? Oh no, you wouldn't.
Oh, I would. We're doing a Breakfast Club, baby.
But teens are over 80s references, and yet every time pop culture tries to move forward, some Gen X loser like you holds a boombox over his head, and we all have to moonwalk back to 1982.
But then they just do it anyway, like acknowledging it doesn't make it any less massively overdone. They just couldn't resist doing this again, could they? The worst part about Velma's humour is the missed potential. There were some jokes that could have been funny if they'd been written, executed, or delivered better.
All their wind chimes have totally screwed up Amanda's nap schedule.
Go back in, Mom. No chimes in, Mom.
But again, even when they have something decent, they can't help but fall flat on their face with it. Just give up at this point, you know? It's just embarrassing for everyone. If Velma 2 had at least been able to make me laugh, a lot of its sins could have been forgiven. All's fair in love and comedy and all that. Just give us something entertaining, that's all we're asking. I've seen funerals funnier than this shit. I wasn't optimistic about seeing an improvement in this regard, so I can't even say I'm disappointed, really. Just tired. Alright, well, how about the animation? Has that improved? Ha! Fuck no. The title sequences are somewhat better, I'll give them that. And as with Season 1, the hallucination scenes and the historical scenes where they emulate older styles of animation are noticeably higher quality and more interesting than everything else. Although that isn't difficult because everything else is dog shit. I think it's safe to assume that the budget was much lower this time around, because the show is full of even more sloppy mistakes, lazy animation, terrible and varying character designs, inconsistencies, badly drawn objects that are obviously just PNGs that they copy-pasted in without bothering to make them look not shit, badly drawn backgrounds that change far more than they should given the change in camera perspective, inconsistent and unnecessary depth of field blurring, bad blocking, which basically means where shit is on the screen. And I don't think I've ever seen crowd shots this blatantly unfinished. Take this shot for example. Here's all the bad things I found in it. Oh wait, sorry. Here's all the bad things I found in it. And other animation errors, like how multiple people's brains get removed or swapped but it never leaves a scar. Or them not bothering to, or perhaps not having the time to sync things up properly. Which also applies to the lip syncing. There's far too many instances where the mouths don't match the dialogue.
But the fact that everyone else loved my catchphrases...
Believe me when I say this. The brain is weird.
Yes, but you were my first best friend, Daphne.
Talk about a crappy job!
And when they have a rare opportunity to do a cool shot, they don't take it. It's just even more of the same, really. Visuals that are a waste of electricity and bandwidth. Why would you look at this when you could look at, I don't know, something that isn't an insult to your eyes? Speaking of insulting, one of the most distasteful aspects of Velma has been the amount of open contempt, whether intentional or not, with which they've treated the intellectual property they're shamelessly trying to profit from. An attitude which was summed up quite nicely when writer Charlie Grandy referred to Scooby-Doo, the quite literal title character of the franchise, as the dog.
You know, we can't have the dog. From Warner said we couldn't ever use it. And that was okay because, again, like, the dog is what rooted it as a kid's show.
The insult to the franchise extended not just to the disgraceful bastardization of its main characters, but also to digs at the franchise in general. And for some bizarre reason, they decided to double down on this, continuing to wave a giant middle finger to Scooby-Doo fans.
The one time I got high, I was convinced a dog was talking to me.
I even got my dogs on the team. It's a gimmick, but it works. That whistle means drop it! Maybe solving mysteries with dogs is a mistake.
You can't just throw references in and expect us to take that as you caring about the franchise when you treat the rest of it so fucking poorly.
I am a great detective. Fred, what are you doing in here?
All it does is remind us of the better stuff that could have been made instead.
People even copy my style.
Are you trying to piss people off? I mean, how did they expect fans to react when Shaggy shows up in a glass of piss? Like, really? Or when they have one of the Hex girls join for this season, but they've made her look like a washed-up whore and she's nothing like how Thorne is in Scooby-Doo? Were they expecting applause for this choice? This also applies to Scrappy. Scrappy-Doo has never been the most popular of the Scooby-Doo cast, to put it mildly, but this show does even him dirty. I mean, get a load of this shit.
That's why you're called Scrappy.
No, Scrappy is a portmanteau of shitty and crappy.
Wow. Good one. I'll bet someone in the writer's room felt very proud of that one. He has his catchphrases from the show, but because this is a not-for-kids version, they're outbursts that result from the torturous experiments that made him, of course.
Ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta! Puppy power! Scrappy-Dappy-Doo! Let me at him! Let me at him!
Also, hold on a minute.
Like, the dog is what rooted it as a kid's show.
So now it was okay to put a talking dog in it? Because reasons? Warner Brothers obviously didn't want Scooby associated with this crap, but I guess Scrappy was fair game because apparently even they didn't care about him. You know what? Well done, Velma. You've managed to do the impossible. Make people root for Scrappy-Doo. At least he died a hero, trying to murder every other arsehole in this. I feel like we all owed Scrappy an apology since he was no longer the worst thing to come out of this IP, and that goes doubly now. If Season 1 of Velma was like the butchering of the Scooby-Doo franchise, then Season 2 is like twerking on its corpse. I just wanted to remind you all that happened. You're welcome. But before we try to wring some conclusion out of this, let's talk about hate-watching for a second. Hate-watching, which is when you watch something ironically in order to hate on it, has become fairly prevalent over the past few years. Or at least it has for people who spend too much time online like I do. And increasingly it's become a thing on social media to rage bait people for views and money. And the subject was brought up frequently when Season 1 of Velma came out. From the antagonistic nature of its trailers, as well as reports of some of its content, it seemed like that's exactly what they were trying to do. Which has led some to come to the conclusion that the reason Velma even got a Season 2 was because of all the hate-watching. I'm going to respectfully disagree with that argument. If rage baiting worked so well with the first season, why wouldn't they double down on it? Season 2 received barely any publicity, and its trailer was fairly moderate in comparison. And if they were trying to create momentum by building on negative publicity, why would they release all the episodes at once, instead of staggering them over weeks as the first season did? From what I've been able to surmise, the deal was originally to make 20 episodes of Velma, which they then split into 2 seasons, which is not unheard of in the animation sphere. This would explain why Season 2 was already in production before Season 1 even released, and it puts paid to the notion that hate-watching was responsible for the show's renewal. Velma wasn't so much renewed as finished, and I feel like that term is a bit too generous. No publicity, released all at once, none of the creators or cast doing any publicity for it. I only knew it was coming out because of a random tweet that showed up on my timeline. Nah, HBO and Warner Brothers wanted to bury this show. They couldn't cancel it because they'd already ordered it and contracts are a thing, but they weren't going to do it any favours either. It seems that hate-watching actually had the opposite effect of what people think it did, which is good because relying on hate-watching is not a healthy, sustainable long-term practice. Now it remains to be seen whether Velma will be actually renewed for a 3rd season. I severely doubt it will though, at least I'm hoping so, because I can't Scooby-Doo this anymore. Actually, wait, there is just one more thing I'd like to do before we finish. Just one more. I promise. Look, I don't want this to just be a never-ending projectile vomit stream of negativity, so I'd like to round off this video by talking about something good. Because I want to talk about good things too sometimes. It keeps me from... you know. Smiling Friends is a good show. It does a lot of the things that Velma tries to do, but actually succeeds.
How do I look, yellow man?
You look like you're about to tell your friend not to come to school tomorrow, man.
It has an interesting cast of likeable characters, great performances, well-written plots, jokes that are actually hilarious, unique character designs, employs a variety of animation styles, and you can tell that it was made by people with genuine passion and enthusiasm for both animation and comedy.
Dude, I warned you. I said I was going to do that if you did that again.
And unlike Velma, it's actually an original IP and doesn't shit on what came before, but actually pays loving tribute to its inspirations. Season 1 was great, but every episode of Season 2 that's been released so far has been consistently fantastic. I actually had to regularly take breaks to watch it in between watching the Velma episodes, just to cleanse my palate and remind me that the world is a place of joy as well as suffering. So do yourselves a favour and go watch it. Because the more of you that do, the more stuff like it can get made.
Hello, I'm Mr. Frog and I approve this message. No, I don't. I hate you. Fuck you.
I know it's kind of weird to say this after I've just made a whole video on it, but Velma Season 2 is one of those things that just deserves to have nothing said about it. This isn't art. This is the definition of content. Something that was produced with little effort and with no passion or enthusiasm. Made out of obligation rather than a need to be creative or to leave something good in the world. You'd be better off smearing shit in your eyes than trying to sit through this. Even for me, this one was difficult. I hope you enjoyed going through this epic adventure with me. It sure was... thrilling. Now go watch something good. For fuck's sake. My neck, my back, my pussy and my crack. I can't believe this is my job. Hey folks, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider becoming a supporter on Patreon or a YouTube channel member. You'll get early access to uncensored versions of videos without ads, as well as a mention here in the credits. Other ways to support the channel include checking out the sponsor, Raycon, picking up some merch, or just following me on social media or joining my public Discord server. Links to everything down below. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.